Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of the Sola Abulu and Learning Series. We're very excited to have you joining us for the mid edition of this virtual event. We just want to say a big thank you to everyone for taking out the time to participate. We promise to deliver a highly interactive and engaging session. We are confident that you will leave considerably better informed about the essentials of strategic communication, and more importantly, about how to communicate with intent and strategy to produce outcomes that will resonate throughout your entire organization, as opposed to solely designing and delivering campaigns that have a resounding impact after the initial time. I am the moderator for this event, and my name is Adora Odua. A little bit about me. I am a trained lawyer, although I do not practice. Between you and I find it a bit boring. I made the switch to communications about 4 years ago, and I have gone on to work as a journalist, content strategist, and a communication strategist in the arts and culture sector, in the education industry, and I also did a very brief stint in tech. I'm currently working as a communication strategist and a trainee consultant at Sola Abulu and Associates. Your host for today, for this event, is Sola Abulu herself. Sola has worked formally in various roles in external communications, communication strategy, and as a communications manager in Shell Nigeria for over 25 years. Today, she is the principal consultant of Sola Abulu and Associates, a strategy and communications consult that is geared towards enabling organizations, businesses, and brands with communications, outcome-driven communication solutions. Sola Abulu and Associates is also dedicated and passionate about thought leadership and positively impacting the new era of communications professionals in Nigeria. This is why we have decided to launch the SA and A Learning Series, which is dedicated to the continued development of young and seasoned communications professionals within Nigeria. Because at the end of the day, our industry is only as excellent as we are. So without further ado, let's get into the topic at hand of this webinar, which is an introduction to strategic communications. From this session, we are going to cover and explore what strategic communications means and how it works. We're also going to get into how to identify your target audience and reach them, as well as how to define communications goals for a business or brand and the essentials of strategy in strategic communications. The chat feature will be live throughout the event for you to leave any comments, and the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screens will also be live for you to leave any questions, which we will get to at the end of the session. So now I hand over to Sola.
Okay, so hello everyone. I hope you can hear me. Let's first do a sound check. How is my sound? Are you hearing me well? Give me some feedback. Put some in the chat if you can hear me. Let me know. If it's not good, okay, yes, thank you, Arinze. Thank you, Dolapo. Thank you, everyone. So welcome to today's session, and thank you so much for joining. Oh yes, loud and clear. Oh, thank you so much. Fair enough, I like that. So you see this kind of buzz, this is what I'm here for. Do you understand? So I want us to keep this energy at the way it is. Everyone else joining, let them meet us with this level of energy. Thank you, William, for the feedback. So just keep it rolling. Comment, feel free to comment. There's going to be quite a lot of people in the chat. So, introduce yourself. This is an opportunity to meet people. Anyone that is on this chat is a person of like mind, like interest. And so just let that chat keep going. And if you have specific questions for me that you would want me to take, please pop it in the question and answer session. My colleagues on the call, Adora, including Kayode, will also prompt me if I miss out anything. So like I always tell people, I talk for a living. That's what I do. So I tend to talk a lot. So I have told them to stop me at 12:30 if I overrun the clock. But so this is going to be 30 minutes. And I will try my best. I won't overrun it because they will stop me. But what I've tried to do with this presentation is to make it high level to the point that everybody can engage with what we're discussing today, because there are some people are here, you're students. So please, if you can tell us a little bit about your background, what your expectations from today are, and that sort of thing. It can help to moderate what I'm saying, but I would try not to talk for too long so that even if I don't speak to what is of interest to you as I'm talking, by the time we get into Q&As, into the questions, then you can then, get a sense of what this is all about. So this is Introduction to Strategic Communications, and this is the Sola Abulu and Associates Learning Series. This is my own personal company, a communications consultancy that started in January of this year. And well, yeah, so in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about my history. I think you can see that. Can I have the next slide, please? So yeah, so I worked a little bit of time in our company for a number of years. And sorry, has the slide moved for everyone? Because it hasn't moved for me. So okay, yeah, so it's moving. So okay, so yeah. So this is my forte: communications, crisis and reputation risk management, 25 years in oil and gas sector, some experience in non-profit, faith-based organizations, and I'm currently the principal consultant for S&AS. Thank you, Chidi, for the feedback. So this is what I do. I love communications. Let's just get that out of the way. This is all I do. And the purpose of this webinar is to really talk to all of us about what it means when we say strategic communications. And strategic, I can go into the definitions of what strategic means, but I think all of us know what it means: premeditated, anything that is purposeful, anything that is thoughtful. But before we even talk about strategic and the difference between ordinary communications and strategic communications, let's first define on a very basic level, what is communications? So on a very basic level, it's very simple. Communications is the process of passing information and understanding. Please note that stress on the word understanding, please. Because I think many of us, we are more focused on passing information alone. Communication has not happened if understanding has not taken place. Please let us bear that in mind. So it is a process of passing information and understanding from one person, a human being, to the other, not to the trees or the plants. Let's keep that in mind. It is the lifeblood of all human transactions. There is no transaction on the face of the earth that is carried out without communication. None. None. So let's put that to bed and go further. Next slide, please. And then there are many ways. My slide moving is a little bit slow. I don't know if I should. Yeah. So my philosophy about communications is this: is that there's communications cuts across every aspect of life. There's communications for work, and then there's communications for life. And today I'm going to be talking about all of this together. So and I want to define some of the terms. If you look at this, if we're talking about a brand, so for instance, if you are here today because you have a brand that you want to, learn a little bit more about how you can be more purposeful in your communications, then a brand, definition of a brand is a product or a service that is delivered by a company or a business under a particular name. Good. Definition of a business is an organization or enterprise engaged. I mean, you can see all the definitions. Let me not go into it. Do we notice the common thing in all these things? Whether it is brand, whether it is business, whether it is society, whether it's organization, it all centers around people, human beings. If you have a brand, you're not selling it to machines. You're not marketing it to machines. You're marketing it to human beings. If you have a business, your organization is centered around human beings. Is commercial, but the organization that will deliver that commercial is actually, okay, so I may have to stop my video. Let me just stop it so that you can hear me, because my internet is a little bit unstable. Okay, so I'm going off my video so that you guys can hear me a little bit more, and I'll come back on in the Q&A. So good, thank you very much. I hope that's good. If it's not, just let me know. So a business is an organization or enterprise engaged in commercial activities. Everything centers around human beings. It's important for us to remember that. Good, excellent. Next slide, please. And to effectively talk, so this one is the most important thing. We must all recognize that we have all been different in the way in which we have been raised. That's the long and short of this slide. In the way in which we perceive the globe, and in the way in which we utilize understanding and it's important for us to keep that in mind in the way in which we communicate with other people. I think this is very, very important, because I think even on a personal level, the reason why a lot of our communication fails is because we make assumptions about the person's mindset, the person's attitudes, the person's behavior, the person's lifestyle. And so long as you are communicating with somebody else and you're not talking to yourself, really, it's not what you think or what I think that really matters that much. It is really, what does my target audience think? How does that person feel? What does the person know? What do I want the person to do? What kind of understanding do I want the person to get from this? And before we go further, because again, I know that the number of us is either we are starting a business, or we have started a business, or we are already in a business, or we are working in an organization, or whatever it is. I did a little bit, just a Google search through the internet, and I looked at several reasons why, top 3 reasons why new businesses fail, even big companies as well. And there were some common threads, no matter who did the research, whether it was a Forbes contributor or somebody from Guardian or This Day, whoever did it, there were some things that came out very strongly. Some of the lists to be as long as 10, some be as long as 15. But I've just used this one, which had about 5 things that, are the reasons why businesses fail. And the first one, they say poor customer dialogue. Second one, no market differentiation. Number 3, failure to communicate value proposition. In fact, I won't go through everything, but out of those 5 top reasons why 80% of new businesses, do you see this? And this report was done by Forbes, an American company. So if in the US, 80% of new businesses fail within 18 months, please, how much more in our own part of the world? So, and what are the 2 out of 5 things? Poor customer dialogue. Sorry, can we go back to that? Poor customer dialogue, and then you are not even able to communicate a value proposition. And the value proposition, so you may have a good product, you may have a good service, the inability to communicate the value that your product or your service gives to the market or to the investors that you are trying to hope will invest in your business is what finishes a lot of companies. And that poor customer dialogue, I can even say that one for many companies in Nigeria. I don't want to mention there are some champion offenders. There's a particular sector that is notorious for this poor customer dialogue. I will not mention them, but I think we all know. And what is customer dialogue? You're not engaging with your customers. There's no opportunity for feedback. Your communication is poor, is ineffective. You're just talking to yourself. You are just concerned with what you want to say. You don't care how your customer is feeling. And you are wondering why your business is not doing well. So yeah, next one, please. So these are just all the reasons why communications need to be strategic. And if we look at what is effective communication, what does it do? And what I've done here, like I said, because I understand that there are a lot of people here coming from different backgrounds, different walks of life. So I've started from the personal level. So on the personal level, what does effective communication achieve? It helps to convey intent. It helps to convey meaning and purpose. It influences, it advocates, it builds relationship, and it wins support. And this is anyone that understands this, you are what we'll call somebody who has interpersonal effectiveness. And it's not something that anybody is born with. Communication is an art as much as it's a science. It is learned, it is a skill that is developed, it is honed. But you first have to start from a place of awareness, build yourself up to knowledge, then up to skill before you become a master. But I say again, if you are unable to communicate in a way that conveys your intention, and please, I want to say something here because I see some communications people, you communicate, at the end of the day, your communication causes controversy. So I wonder, what was your objective in starting out? How did you think through the process? So a brand, again, if a brand communicates effectively, what does it do? It is able to impact on the overall customer experience. And again, communication is not just what you say, it's also what you do, making sure that lines together. You will win loyalty. All of that is communication, whether you are doing it through your Instagram page, whether you are doing it from the way your service, the way you deliver on time, the way your customer service officers relate with people, the messages, the tone of your emails that you send. All of that is all about effective communication around your brand. If it's for your business, it drives efficiency within the organization because everybody knows what they are supposed to do. How many of us have worked in those companies where nobody knows what they are supposed to do, or 10 people are doing the same thing, everybody is struggling for the same piece of work? It's ineffective communication. Of course, in such a place, morale too will be very low. Productivity cannot be optimal in that kind of environment as well. An efficient organization is one that has developed a system that allows information to travel to everybody that needs to get it at the time they're supposed to get it, in the way that they're supposed to get it, in a way that, regardless of the background they're coming from, they understand what they need to do. And that's the difference between communications and strategic, purposeful communication, not just communication as if you are pouring water into a bucket just for the sake of doing so. You don't really care what happens afterwards. And effective communication in an organization, timely and seamless flow. And honestly, when you see such organizations, they're a beauty to work in, they're a beauty to engage with. And society, if communication is effective in a society, there are only two things that it does. It builds trust and it saves lives. And that is never more true than it is today, even in the world, in the situation that we're in right now. Because everything is about how do you communicate to build trust? How do you communicate to keep people safe? What does ineffective communication do? And for this one, I'm just going to refer to some reports that some very brilliant people have already done. And all of this one, I'm quoting from work that is done outside of Nigeria. So just so that we can see that in the so-called developed world, even in the developed world, for those of us who are from, Nigeria, I know some other people may be on this call, they're not from Nigeria as well, but for people from, just for us to get a sense that this is a fundamental human situation. The challenge of communications applies to everybody across board. So this report showed, it's a book called The Cost of Poor Communication. It's by David Grossman. You can look for it if you have the opportunity to on Amazon, it's there. And he did a survey of about 400 global companies, about 100,000 employees. And in each of those companies, each of them has about 100,000 employees. So you can imagine how big that company is. They found out that they lost about an average of $62.4 million every year due to poor communications. A Harvard Business Review also said the same thing, that the silent killer of big companies is ineffective communication. It looked at a number of our 5 very big ticket situations. And as recently as December 2019, pre-pandemic, Stephen, a Forbes contributor, wrote an article saying that ineffective communication is still the primary, that was foremost contributor to project failure. Not that the people were not technically sound, not that their equipment failed them, not that they did not get permits from the government, not that the community did not allow them to work. No, the inability to manage the communications around their project led to the project failing, not even stalling, no, failure. So what is strategic communications? It is the purposeful use. And I want to, if there's anything that this definition must stick in everybody's head, purposeful, because I see a lot of unpurposeful use of communication by businesses, by brands, and even by organizations, which is very frustrating, particularly in this COVID period. It is not something that should actually happen at all. But the companies that do get it, the brands that do get it, it shows, and you see it up front. And I don't want to mention any names, but there are a lot of companies after this webinar. If you begin to pay attention, there are a lot of people that we can actually see and say that they are doing this very intentionally. So it is the purposeful use of your communication and messaging by a business, and you tie it to fulfill your goals, your mission, or your values. So this is relevant to everybody. And like I said, on a personal level too, if you are somebody that is purpose-driven, then really the way you come across is something we need to work at to make sure that we're able to work in a way that enables us to achieve our mission. So I'll put on my video just a little bit so that you're not too bored just by reading the text. If it gets bad again, I'll put it back off. Okay, so next slide. Sorry, it's not moving for me also. Yeah, okay. So, and what it does, it actually draws upon professional practices. So strategic communications draws upon professional practices in public relations, PR, mass comm, advertising, and organizational communication. And organizational communication includes both employee communication, business communication, and things like that. Yes, we can. Well, strategic communication is proactive. I will please hold thought to that question. Just keep it in the, I will come back to that question. That's a very good question. Thank you, Mr. Aribido, for that question. So it draws upon these practices. In organizational communication, you have employee communication, you have business communication, there is marketing communication, there is so much in that. And like I said, today's webinar is very high level because it's not possible for me to go into all of these things that people actually go and spend 4 years in the university to do. But high level questions, I can respond. And as time goes on, we will do some webinars that may focus on some of the aspects of this. If you want to make any suggestions for future topics at the end, please post it in the chat as well. My colleagues will draw, and then we can also revisit that going forward. But I now want to hone in on the strategic parts of communications. And I'm really hoping that everybody, please stay with me on this one so that you understand where I'm coming from on this. So if you look at this entire process, for those of us who are communications people, you already know this is familiar. So let me start from the beginning. If you have a situation or a challenge or whatever, or your business, or you're at a point where you feel you want to reach out to an audience, the first place to start from is your goals. What is your objective? What do you want to achieve? It's so important that you are very, very clear about this. And you need to articulate it in a way that makes sense. And that goals must be linked to outcome. It should be linked to your overall strategy. It should be linked to where you think you are going. And then number 2, you look at your target audience. That's one, you have to spend a lot of time thinking because the world is, we're billions of people on the planet. In Lagos alone, 22 million. If you have a product, it's not everybody that's going to buy your product. You need to know who is your customer. What's the age of the person? Where does the person live? What do they like? What mindsets do they have? What attitudes do they have? What behaviors do you have? And finally, in external context, what is happening in the environment that is relevant to you? For instance, if there's a national tragedy going on, that is not where you should come and be launching your product about alcohol. I'm sorry. If everybody is mourning, that is doing that is being highly, in short, I don't even know what to call it. You are not being strategic at all. The timing is off. So these first 3 points is where success or failure happens in communications. You can fail in other areas of production, all those things. If your product is not good, sorry, it's not me. There is no communication that will help you. If you have a bad product, when people use it, they know that it's bad, that will work against you. If your profit model, your business model, your way of making money, you haven't done your maths well, it's not communications alone that will resolve that. But in the areas that communications, which is around influencing, persuading, presentation, packaging, all of that, you need to spend time in these first 3. So don't rush to markets. There are too many people rushing to communicate, rushing to markets. In short, most people jump to number 4. And as a communication professional, this was something I always resisted actively and made sure when I was working in my corporate jobs, I used to tell my team members, don't allow anybody to come to you and say, we want to do a campaign. Please let us run poster. We want to do 2 banners. They won't even tell you what they're trying to achieve. Your role is just to post for them. So at the end of the day, many of them run the campaigns, nothing moves. Nothing moves. And if you're a business person and that's how you make money, like you're a digital marketer, you don't really care, that's fine. But what you just know is that that person will not come back to you again. When the person sees that I did not sell one thing as a result of your campaign, even though you flooded Twitter, you flooded Instagram, you flooded Facebook, because you didn't ask any questions. You didn't ask the person, how old has your brand been in existence? Who is your existing customer base? Where do they live? What do they do? What kind of feedback? Can I see your customer service proposition? Let me see some of the WhatsApp chat between you and your customers. Because maybe the person even has bad delivery of service. So there should actually be an issue whereby, the person should actually be, something that they need to address before you begin to communicate. In any way, stay in this place. Do what you need to do before you now start talking about message. Your message should gather all of the insights you have done around the target audience, put that in information. Now, your messaging should communicate what you want people to know, what you want them to feel, and what you want them to do. That's what we have in information, emotion, and action. If it's awareness, there's a different way to communicate for awareness. If it is an experience you want to create, there's also a different way. But if I want to create an experience for someone, it's what I know about you that I will use to create that experience in communications. But if I need you to change your behavior, man, that's another level. The communication for awareness is not the same as the communications for behavior. So that will inform and then platform, you go to where your customers are. I say, you don't just decide on social media If you are looking at people who don't use social media, please don't do social media. Do face-to-face or other ways of getting them. Use the places that they normally use already. And then tie your measurements to outcomes. Back to what I had said. Don't just say you have done the campaign. I see communications professionals reporting campaign. What do I want to do with campaign? Tie it to the business. And which brings you back to goals. Your goals at the onset must be tied to outcomes. So next slide. I've been told that I have less than 10 minutes more, so I need to just rush through. Anyway, she'll stop me when I'm done. So I've given different examples of how this works out in real life. So if it's organization, imagine now you want to do face mask. You are a manager in a company and you need to tell your people to start wearing face mask. So your goal is that you want them to start wearing face mask. Why are you choosing that goal? You need them to keep safe because it's a place where a lot of people come in and you want to make sure that everybody is healthy and that they protect themselves. But if you have your target audience, you need to think about your population. Where do they come from? Are they part of the people that don't believe that there is COVID? Because if they have that mindset already, then the way you need to communicate to such people is very different. Maybe you will look for someone that survived COVID to come and talk to them. You have to consider their attitudes, their behaviors, and their current lifestyle. That is what you will use to decide what kind of message you will share, where it will be, who will speak to them. And then you think about the external context as well. So what is happening outside that is relevant to what I'm trying to achieve? Before you now develop your messaging strategy. And again, whether it is information, so there are some things you will give them as information. There's some things that you will do to motivate them. You work on the emotions so that the person, because if you cannot, wearing a face mask is a heart and mind thing. It's not only information. So if you cannot convince me and you can't give me something like, oh, I'm protecting my family, something, that makes me want to do it, I won't get the action. So the platform again, platform is go to where your audience is. Don't try and bring your audience. I see people say, hey, I want to direct them to my website. Direct now, whether I will come there. Better come to where I am first. When you have reeled me in as your customer, then you can be talking of bringing me to your platform. And measurement and outcomes. So your outcome, success for you in that company is there by compliance. So for me, if I'm running this campaign for a company like this, at the beginning, I'll be telling them this is what you want to achieve. You want people so that they'll be safe. Measurement for me is not just that I ran the campaign, whether it was internal communications or whatever. It's about how much compliance did we see around the face mask wearing? How many people remained healthy over the period? How many COVID, I hope we didn't get, if there was zero infection, yes, that is success for me. It's not about the tick the box, the other communication things I did. It's about the actual outcomes that is linked to the business. How is face mask linked to the business? If, for instance, you are able to keep your people safe and healthy, no infections, then no downtime. There was a company in Oyo State, for some of us who may not know, that had 50 workers, 50 infected with COVID. The Oyo State government eventually shut it down, 50. 50, one company. So that is the difference between, and what is that? Clearly a communication failure. Even the decision to shut down, something has gone wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? So communication failed along several lines, which is why they got where they were. Either communications to the workers on keeping themselves safe, communication of the risk within where they were working, whatever. That whole situation was not managed well. And that is the risk of ineffective communication. So next slide, please, and I'll just move on. So Adora, I think you're going to have to stop me at the stage because I think I'm overrunning. So there's also an experience on this one is similar. This is a business example as well. It's the same thing, mindset, attitudes, behaviors, lifestyle. You bring that strategy in, be very clear about your goals. And I have SMART goals written there, which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, and aligned with the core goal of the business. Again, if it's a new product launch, for instance, you find out from your order, if it's one of these companies that has many products, you don't then go and you find out, do you have any other product you are launching now? Don't cannibalize your own business. So think about the high level strategy of that business before you just decide to go out and be doing things anyhow, and I think most marketing professionals know this, but I'm just sharing this for those of us who are starting out in the profession, just to know that these are some of the thinkings that, some of these big companies and brands do. That's why you see some of these bottling companies still today, they corner the market. If you see any nice drink, by the time you look at the label, you see the same old people, because the data they put behind their men, they can spend years working on their products, getting the information they need about audience behavior. They know their markets. They will pitch. Every drink is not for everybody. Every product is not for everybody. but you hone in on your market and you hold them well. Some people, I know people who have only 3 customers in their portfolio. The 3 customers, you make sure, oh Lord, anyway, let's just move on so that I don't stay there. But it's all about communications. It's all about how do you persuade people? How do you compel? How do you show up? How do you influence people in a positive way? Next slide, please. I think you probably moved it. Maybe I can't see it on my own feed. Yeah. So, and I want to give a personal example for those of us who maybe you're not business people, you're not in organization, but you're just here anyways. So this one is, let us use something that every Nigerian can relate to. I said I should put this on. So this is like you're going for a visa interview. And I kid you not, I put the 3 strategic steps. Keep that in your mind: goals, audience, context. Many people, Nigerians, fail visa interview because of this. Because first of all, okay, your goal is that, okay, you want to get the visa, good. You don't remember, so you need to align it to the mission. You want to come out with the visa, fine. You should remember that. So you don't want it at all to be, you don't want to lose that visa. Very, very good, okay. Now your target audience is the people that are going to give you the visa. Look, spend time to read the criteria of the people you are going to be applying to. Read the guidelines of what they've said. And if you see that at the end of the day, based on the criteria and the guidelines, they are not likely to issue you a visa, please don't bother going for the visa. And wait until that time, as you can gather things that will convince them. No, but what do most of us do? We will just wing it and say, well, God is on my side. Okay. You don't think of the external context as well. So if this is an embassy that is notorious for handling things in a particular way, you really want to go into it without factoring that into place. So it is when you have done that your strategic work well, that is when you now begin to gather the documentation, the messaging that you will use to present yourself in that place. And you will then attend the interview on the platform and you come out to the outcome. I can promise you that a lot of people that have been refused is because they lost it in that first 3 steps, in the 3 strategic steps. They went straight into implementation without reading up and knowing enough about the place, the audience they were trying to inform. Because all you need to do is convince a visa officer. They will give you visa. If you cannot convince them, you will not get it. Finish. So next slide. So that's just a personal one. It's an aside, but it's just to show us the importance of being purposeful about communications. And then this one, I don't know if you can read this actually, but I just did this as a sample of if this is for the HR people, if there are any HR people on the line, this was really about if you wanted to do something around employee communications on COVID-19 in a bank, for instance, you can see the different categories of people, audiences, the staff, people in the banking hall, customer service, security men, cleaners, and drivers. You have a goal for each and every one of them. And you know that, of course, you need to think about what they are thinking about at that time. They'll be worried about their job. They'll be worried about this and that. Maybe you're telling them to work under restricted hours. But, you have to be able to speak to them in a language that they will understand. Because if they do not work in the way that you intend that is for them to work, they will cause problems for the branch, which may eventually filter to the government, which will eventually affect your productivity. So this is about the know, the feel, and the do. So you can see that that's addressing the mindset. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? Your audience interest and insights, you need to have it down. So this is a template that we normally use for internal communications when we are doing that sort of thing. There are many templates that the professionals use, which I think some of us will be more or less familiar with, but I just wanted to put that out there for those who are communications or HR professionals, just to know that beyond this, there's a whole lot more that we can do. And internal communications is actually, employee communications is a major area, which I think it shows several webinars, but I'm not going to go too much into that. I have to round up now. So do's and don'ts. Do. When you are strategic communication, start with strategy. Start and end with strategy. Start with strategy. Solve problems. Don't just run campaigns. Please. There's a problem. Solve it now. And before you can solve that problem, you need to understand the problem. It's important. Strategy has to. Communications can only work when strategy is inside it. It's not just about tactics. Because, anyways, link it to the outcome. Understand your audience, understand the business as well. And then have a campaign. Don't have a campaign-only mindset. Be tactical. Don't ignore external context, and don't ignore, what's the last one? The core purpose of the business as well. So I think I'm So I will end with a quote. I think I'm almost, I've run out of time, which I put on my Facebook post. I think when I did a post 2 days ago. I don't know if you guys can see it yet. I can't see it on my screen yet. But I think my reflection over this moment is that whether we realize it or not, every challenge or opportunity that we face in life has communications at the heart of it, either to resolve it or to realize that opportunity. And I think, therefore, it is something that all of us need to take the time to see how we can be more purposeful in our communications, both in our personal lives, in work, in business, as a brand, as an organization, or in every sphere of life as we so desire. So thank you very much for listening. I think I can show my Twitter handles. I will take questions from now. Back to you, Adora. I hope you guys, I hope you followed me a little bit, Sha. And thanks to everyone, 70 participants, really awesome on a Thursday. So grateful. Thank you, guys. Adora, back to you. I think you need to unmute.
Can you hear me, ma'am? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, right.
Adora, you seem to be okay.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so let me
just
Okay, Kayode, over
ask
to you. Okay.
some of the questions from some of the participants. So someone asked, how does strategic communication differ from propaganda and strategic deception?
Very good. So Isho, thank you so much for that question. I just love that question because this is really awesome. You're right. It's just about, there's a big difference, but it's all about ethics. So if you are, and I'm talking to practitioners here, for me, it is a choice. And I think in some of the professional associations that we join, particularly the international ones, they ask you to actually sign up to a code of ethics. I am on the Africa board of the International Association of Business Communicators, and there's a code of ethics. For that reason, I will not take up any job where you're telling me to do propaganda. Sorry. It's a matter of choice because yes, you can actually use these tools in a negative way, but it will always come back at you because eventually, you know how they say you can only deceive some people sometimes, you can only deceive whatever. So, but what in the positive sense is about you being upfront, which is why I said, if you know, you use the first 3 steps, when you know that you are not ready for some of those things, your communication should line up. For instance, you shouldn't be telling lies. You shouldn't tell people that if you click on this thing, in 30 minutes, you will get a discount. When you know that you're not going to give them a discount, that is wrong. And thank God for social media, because definitely you will get that backlash. So the fact that you are purposeful and intentional does not mean you are a manipulator. It does mean that you are being more intentional. For instance, like I tell people, if sometimes you want to pass a message on to someone and you didn't intend to make the person angry, being strategic is you sitting back rather than just going to tell the person, look, that thing you did, I didn't like it. No, because you just wanted the person to understand that what you did, you didn't like. You sit down, think about this person. If I come like this person is likely to get angry. Okay, so let me refine my messaging. Let me work on my tone. Let me choose my words. That is not being manipulative. You're just being wise. Because at the end of the day, what is the outcome for the person to change the behaviors? I hope that answers your question. But at the end of the day, it's really about ethics. So, Kaide, any other question?
Okay, so we have another question from Mrs. Eunice Otoki. Okay, so she was just asking how to get across to you. So we'll get back to you, Ma. So someone said, please, I have 2 questions. How do you tie outcomes and measurements to the goals? Then, what's the role of research in developing the strategic steps to communication? That's from Mr. Tunde Aribuido.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Maybe I should check into the chat myself. Okay, so let me just take the questions. Okay, let me take the questions I can see here because I can't hear you very well. So how can I monetize my strategic communication as a startup? So Arinze, that's a very that's a long prong question, which I really cannot answer here. So but I would say it's about where do you think you should pitch yourself? So for everyone, you have to find out where your strength is, where you have passion for, and where you think, your audience is, and how you can, market yourself in that way. It's a journey that you have to find. For instance, if I talk about myself, I had to decide for myself. I have worked for how many years? I am a communication strategist and expert. I am not going to be doing digital marketing and influencer. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to set up a very niche communications consultancy. I will focus on thought leadership. I will focus on learning for the younger ones, some of which I may do pro bono. I will focus on internal employee communications and things around that piece. I will not be running water army campaign like people on Twitter. I'm not going to do that. Neither am I going to be doing typical digital buying and advertising. So I am going to carve my niche. Yes, that means there's some work that I won't get and I can't. But yes, because there's no point. It's not something I have passion or energy for. I think I am better served doing the sort of things that, I am better gifted to do. So I think it's really about everybody finding their niche. So for some people, it will be PR, for some it will be advertising, for some it will be around the digital marketing space. But in all those places, we should be a bit more strategic and we should learn as we grow, is what I would say. So Tunde has a question who says, how do you tie outcomes and measurements to goals? So I think, so tying outcomes and measurements to the goals is really about the difference between saying, what do you want to achieve, and thinking about what happens after. So if I want to give the face mask campaign example now, if your outcome is not very clear, the fact that you communicated is enough. And I remember, we've all worked in organization when people will say, okay, they'll say, go and tell the staff that this thing is supposed to happen in 2 months, we're going to roll out this initiative. People will just go, hold a meeting, and they come back and say, we've communicated. Meanwhile, the staff left there with more questions than answers. You have not communicated, you have just held an event. So your outcome should be, I want to communicate to staff in such a way that they understand that this thing is happening in 2 months' time, or what they need to do to ensure that they are ready for go live, they do it. Those of them that need to get back to their PC and wipe out their PC or install the program, do the training, they do it. Success is the outcome that everybody has done the training. When the go live happens, it is a seamless transition and there is no failure gap. Rather than tying it to, I held a meeting and I communicated. Do you understand that? So the strategic intent of the communication is what you link it to. Until that outcome is achieved, communications has not happened. Remember what we said, information versus understanding and then action. And I always say, if you want to change somebody's behavior or you want them to act, look at face masks. See the fight in America over wearing a face mask, please. And that's about people's mindset, about their behaviors, what they believe. So you can't communicate to those kind of people the same way you would with a certain kind of people. And having the data and understanding people a little bit more will really change the energy that the way in which we communicate with some of them, I would say. So what's the role of research in developing, the strategic steps to communications? You need a lot of research, you need a lot of data. But I would always counsel people, if you're a small business, you don't need to go and start buying data. Work with the one that is coming to you. For instance, if you are selling products and people are returning it, they're not coming back again, that again is a feedback. Then you need to ask your customers, why, this thing, how was it, find out. That's your own data. I personally believe in the data that you gather around your context physically every day, because that makes a lot of sense. If you can also read, thank God for internet, please buy data and research too. Go on Instagram. I learn a lot just by looking at other people that are doing your own type of business. Go and see how they are engaging with their customers. What are they doing? That's market research for you. Particularly those ones that you feel you are doing the same sort of thing. Then, yes, so that's research. So the bigger companies, they do a lot of research, they commission, they spend a lot of money. If you are small, do your research on the internet, it works, it's okay for you. And then with the little customers that come day by day, engage them. And that's part of the, what we talked about earlier. Then Emeka has a question. He says, how does one become a strategic communications professional? It's a bit difficult distinguishing from the others like behavioral change, communication, public relations. Okay, good. Well, I would say, the difference between public relations and strategic communication, I think that one is a bit easier to describe. Public relations in those days, so I'll say public relations is the baseline profession for everybody. So we must have an element of public relations, which is why I said strategic comms draws on all those 4 disciplines. So for me, I have done PR. I started off as a PR person. I've done government relations. Public relations is managing relations with the public. But I want to say something. Not everybody that does public relations is a strategic communications professional, because a strategic communications professional, you have to understand strategy, you have to understand business, and you have to be able to write excellently. A lot of PR people cannot write to save their lives. I'm sorry. They don't understand tone. They don't understand language. They don't understand messaging. Unfortunately, the world out there doesn't know that. So they hire PR people. Now, in our profession, they are the relationship managers. Then they are the communication experts. If you are lucky, you will join the two. But most times, most of us are stronger in one area than others. I have met some people, they can manage relationships, which is you go somewhere, you know, media relations, government relations, but they can communications. It's about how you influence people with words, how you change minds, how you persuade, the use of language, the use of tone in written form. Very few people. So we find out, like even in everywhere I've worked, we have seen that the communications people are a niche. So, and it's not everybody. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's just that, like in a crisis, a PR person will put you in trouble, because the person will not be looking at the environment, and a lot of them have put companies in trouble because they just go out, everything they tell them to do, they just do it. Because when we started out in the profession, it didn't really teach us a lot of, you know, audience and communications. Although, again, let me nuance my word a bit. If you are a curious PR person, you should also imbibe that. But I see a lot of people struggling with the transition, is what I'm saying. So I still see, particularly in our environment, people still sticking to that PR propaganda, say it's just spin. So strategic communications is not spinning. So I think that's just about it, because a strategic communication will manage the risk in such a way that tomorrow, what you say today will not come and cause problem for you tomorrow. But the PR person may not be looking at that. It's just thinking about making you feel good at this point. Although I believe that good PR should not be that way as well. But unfortunately, I think more people practice it in that way. Behavioral change communication. Well, again, that is just one aspect, because there is an aspect of strategic communications that requires behavioral change, but there is risk communication. All of that needs to be strategic, and there's an element of information or awareness in that. It may require behavioral change, it may not. Sometimes it's just sharing facts, sometimes it's just creating an experience. You don't even want to change the behavior. So strategic communications cuts across all. And I believe that, you know, in levels of our professional field, like I said, there's awareness, there's skill, there's knowledge, there's skill, there's mastery. Not everybody needs to be a master, but I think awareness is that the fact that we're even lacking awareness, I think is a major problem. And I think some people, we actually lack awareness on the fact that those 3 strategic steps are important, and that you need to think about the goals of the organization, the audience you are talking to, what their own interests are, not your own, as well as the external context, anything that is happening in the external environment that may impact on what you're about to tell those people. So yeah. For communications professionals that work in-house, how do you build trust with the organization to move towards co-creating solutions, especially when communications has previously been an afterthought? So Daffy, thanks for that. It's an ongoing thing. And I think it's really about how we insert ourselves into conversations. And when you make up that, you make sure that when you show up in the places where you show up, that you show up in such a way that you create an unforgettable experience that makes them come back for more. And so make the best of that one time they call you into the space. So what I used to do when I was working in, you know, those big organizations was that I would come, and unlike other professionals that we start at number 4, like I said, you can't come to me and tell me, oh, Sola, we want to do a campaign, we want to do poster. I will take you back to number 1. That's what I do. So the first time you do that, and they see you take the time to begin to understand their business, they will respect you. Then they realize that this person is different. Of course, you will have done your homework before you go into that meeting. Again, remember the visa interview thing. Before you go into any meeting as a communications professional, remember the do's and don'ts. Understand the business. Don't go in and you're talking, I see many communications people only talking Instagram and Facebook, but I don't want chop. Really? Those platforms are built around businesses, around people. So understand, don't just talk about the platform. The platform is a tool, it's not the end. It is a means to an end. Be very clear about what that end is for the person that is paying you, so that the person can come back. So, Daffy, I hope that answers your question in a little way. So remember the first three. The difference between strategy and communications is that first three. And like I said, most people, they go to 0 to 4. They go to number 4 straight. So how do you build a marketing strategy? This is from Timmy. Thank you for joining. A marketing strategy for a personal brand. When you as the individual is the brand, which means your personality needs to come through while still being intentional about my communication. So yes, that's exactly. And that's very important. So I think you have to have a brand philosophy, first of all. Who are you? And I think I would talk from my personal experience. I think when I was working, I sort of like had a sense of who I wanted to be. So things are like when I told you I will not do propaganda. In terms of ethics, I want to be somebody that is principled. I want to be transparent. I want to stand for something. I want to be authentic in the way in which I come across. And I think you see a little bit of that also in the way in which I show up. And it was my understanding of that that made me decide to set up my company in my own name, because I want it to be a brand of, this is Shola's view of communications, my experience. I will not do it the way other people are doing it. So I don't want to know if this is how you do your communications. You go, anything they tell you to do, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, you just go ahead and do it. It's okay for you, fine, that's your choice. But for my own brand, I will only work with people who will want to do communications in a positive impact way. In other words, you are not deceiving, you're not spinning, but you are communicating what you have done, because ultimately it will still come back at you. And me, I have a reputation to protect, even if thou does not have one. So it's really about, you first have to be clear about your brand philosophy, then be clear about what you want to do, how you want them to build it, you articulate it, and you shine it through, build a philosophy around it, and try to implement it. Again, your audience, though, you then have to know whether there's an audience out there that will appreciate those attributes and look for it. I think what happens is a lot of people want to be everything to everyone, so therefore they now, try to be so many things, and everybody just, well, I guess it works for them. So how do you build a comes for a personal brand, which means your personality come through, while still being intentional? Yes, I think bringing your personality through is also a good strategy of being intentional. That you can weave that into your brand. The fact that your personality is shining through I don't see that as a disadvantage in any way. So how do you improve your writing skills? You don't have to, you can get people to write for you as well. I think for me, I think that's why people like us have jobs. So get an expert, TV, is what I would say. But at least get someone to advise you, and then read it. And if you don't like it, then William says, how do you make your customers of different cultures to view your social media platforms? That's a good one. You have to understand them a little bit more and speak in the language that they will understand. Sometimes, you can't, if your site is too heavily leaning in one culture, then really other people will not engage in it. So it's either you decide to make it what you call global, of which you will suffer a bit, you have to find a way of mixing it. But if there's a way you can also ring fence some platforms for certain audiences, also do that. Don't join everybody if they don't need to be joined, is what I would always say. That audience narrowing, that targeting these days, it needs to be very, very specific, specific, really as tight as you can get. Just narrow it down. Don't, like one of my very dear colleagues said in the last webinar I joined, she said the days of spray and pray are over in communications, where you just pray and you pray that, let the communications land where it should be. These days we target as in, if it's possible, to pinpoint it, because really you don't need 7 billion people. You don't need all the people on the planet. Even up till today, when you look at Microsoft and all of that, their customers base compared to the entire planet is still very small. Even iPhone, not everybody can afford it, but they have narrowed it to the people, the customers, the people that they know that anytime an iPhone comes and they will buy it, they have honed their understanding of that market to the point that even if it's a 500,000 naira phone, people will pay money and buy it. But it's not for everybody, and they don't mind. So they understand their audience. So the more we can hone to our audience and go that way, the better. How can you, this is Mercy, thank you so much. How can you strategically identify your customers on social media? I think, and this is Mercy. Mercy has a thriving fashion designing business, Mayan Couture. She's actually my sister-in-law, so power to the people. So she So Messi, I think already, I think it's really about just checking out a little bit more and just being out. You can also do sponsorships, because I think when you do sponsored promotions, that's a way in which you can then attract people. So anybody who clicks or comes to your website when you do a sponsored promotion is likely to be somebody that is interested in what you are doing. So that on Instagram, I think that works very well. Instagram particularly, I think Facebook as well, but I can speak more of Instagram, particularly for the kind of business that you are in. Another way is to, like I said, go to another site where you see people doing, you know, what you are doing, and just sort of see the people that are there. But on social media, particularly Instagram, and apologies, maybe I can't talk so much about Facebook because I'm not as active on Facebook as I am on Instagram in terms of observing behaviors. But on Instagram, I see that really it's very easy to identify people who are in the same field as you are in. And if you do a sponsored promotion, they just follow you. After that, when they see that thing they like, if you promoted one or two things, they will follow. And then after that, you know, anybody that is attracted to follow you after you did a sponsored promotion is likely to be a potential customer, likely. But again, there's nothing else. Word of mouth, I think the followers that you currently have, to continue to push to them as well is also good, because they will also lead you to other people that are likely to be how would I say, to also be customers. So I think that's the last question I have on my, oh no, there's still more. Okay, Cyril, thank you, Cyril. What exactly are you communicating to us with the traditional flutist behind you, Cyril? No, that was well, actually, that was a parting gift from my last from our former company. You know that. Thank you, Cyril. What role does customer data play in communications, and how do you go about it? Again, this is all part of the audience insights that we need. So if you have data, again, and I think this answers Messi's question as well, any data or behavior or mindset or lifestyle that you notice about the customers that you have, please don't joke with it, because you should use that to now plan the other things you want to do around those customers, the experience you create around them, the communications you create around them, the marketing, even your products and your services. So the entire aspect of whatever you do in marketing communications, in your service communications, in your product communications, in your everyday customer experience should be fed by the data you get from your customers. That, to me, I believe that that's data from customers in terms of their mindset, their attributes, their attitudes, their behavior, their lifestyle is more important to you than even that one from outside. It doesn't mean that you ignore the external one, but this is your customer base, people who have interacted with you already. So the short answer to your question is it plays a big role, and you can gather that data. If you don't have a way of gathering your customer data, you have to start doing it in this COVID time. So there must be a way, whether you are getting people to register, they are sharing things, or you are logging the people that are buying from you, you know, where they are coming from, how many things they bought, the kind of, you should know, for instance, if you are a fashion designer like my sister-in-law is, you should know what your most selling out dress is, and the age of the people that buy that clothes, then that dress, and how many times they buy it, and what times of the year are good seasons for you. You know, all of that data, you should be working it, because that's your customers are giving you feedback, you know. So that behavior and lifestyle, the way they behave around your service and your products, is very important. So Tunde Fakule asked me that what is, in my opinion, what is the number one enemy of effective communication? I think it's complacence, taking things for granted, I would say. Jumping to number 4, having a campaign mindset without having outcomes in your mind. For me, I think that's the thing I hate the most about the way communications is handled. People just don't think through. They just jump straight to implementation. They don't even think about what they're even trying to achieve. You don't think about the audience. And then you are wondering, these people you are going to talk to now, and they have a mindset. They already have a mindset. Like me now, I have a mindset about the kind of person that can make certain things for me. Before you talk to me, you have to understand my mindset about that. You don't just jump in and I say, come on, no, I'm not going to. Sorry, you can't convince me, because you want me to buy. And anybody in marketing will know that the value chain before you actually get people to bring out their money and pay for something is a very long one. There is awareness, there is belief, there is purchasing power before the commitment to, and then the fulfillment to market is a long chain, and there's a lot of communication both in what you say and in what you do before you actually achieve that. So I would say, I think this is the last question now. I think we're almost out of time. Okay,
we have a few questions.
Laura, back to you.
We have a few questions that came up in the chat. So just about 3. So the first question is it safe to say that strategic communications should also be known as proactive communications? That is, how much of it is something that is premeditated, considering that there's only so much that you can foresee, and then how much of it should then be reactive or passive?
So yeah, I would say being proactive. So I think there are 2 different things, because even they are related, but they are different in that for you to be proactive, you need to have thought it through, and you've realized that being proactive in that situation is the best strategy for you. But if you have not thought it through in terms of your goals, in terms of the audience, in terms of the external, so what is this timing? Are you going to annoy people even more by what you are saying? If you don't factor that in, your being proactiveness makes the matter worse. But there are some, you can then decide to say, okay, I won't go to the press on this issue. I won't be proactive to the press. I'll be reactive to the press. But for my stakeholders, my investors, the people that I need to get on side, the people that I'm owing money, let them go to them, and I'll go to them and say, please, this is what's going on. The government has put this regulation on us. We're not sure where it's going to come to. So with those people, you will talk to them. But in the media, it may not help the matter. That is where the strategic thinking comes from. So again, like I said, a lot of thinking. And if I want to make a difference between the people who just rush into communication and people who are strategic communication, is the difference between thinking and doing. Some people, they just do. As in, I want to do, they just do. The strategic communicator thinks. You spend a lot of time thinking, reflecting, gathering information, building your understanding, your knowledge, because you are going to talk to human beings, particularly if you are looking for a change in behaviors. It's different from awareness. If you also want to create an experience, if you want to touch somebody's heart, there's a difference in the way in which you communicate, rather than if you just want to pass on information. If you also want to create a memorable experience with your customer, there's a whole thing you need to do. And if you want to create brand loyalty, you know what loyalty means? Loyalty means you will not come back. I want to give an example, and just to show communication is not just about what you say. So I have somebody who makes clothes for me. She talks to me on WhatsApp. She prioritizes my work. My whole customer experience with her, our tool of communication is WhatsApp. I have not seen her, for a greater part of this year, but the experience she creates for me through WhatsApp is so personal, is so compelling, is useful for me. She has studied me well, and she gives me the service that matches my expectations. For some other person, it may not work, but it works for me. So that audience insight is really what is most important. But again, to the question about proactiveness, you need to have the strategic thought to decide when it is best to be proactive or reactive. You are not just proactive and you push into everything just for the sake of being proactive. Sometimes it's better to be reactive, but it's how you think through that determines. So Adora, which other question again? I'm sure we have reached 1 o'clock right now. Okay.
A final question, which is about 3 questions, but they're all kind of asking the same thing. So communications is it's about more than communicating with customers. It's also about communicating with clients. So number 1, how do you communicate with stubborn clients who may not want to take on your advice? And on how do you communicate your value proposition as a communications professional to businesses to say, look, I know that you may want to, your biggest priority may be pushing out a viable product, but you need communications in order to do that. So how can I market myself to these brands and organizations?
So again, back to the audience. These clients that you're talking about, who are they? What do they like? What are the beliefs that they have formed in their mind that is going to be counter to what you are doing? Exactly like what I was saying. For instance, if you are going to certain embassies in Nigeria, they believe that every Nigerian is a crook. You need to understand that before you go for the interview. So what are the beliefs that they have? And if it is in your process of finding all of that out, you may now find out that actually these clients, I have the wrong people on my client list. It may also mean that you need to change your value proposition as well. Again, like I said, many times we struggle, we rush into implementation without finding out as much about the audience, whether it's customer, whether it's client. A client is a customer too. Is it not a client? Is not going to pay. He's a customer. So don't get hung up on those terminologies. The client and customer, c'est pas la même chose. It's the same thing. Or c'est la même chose. I don't understand that phrase. It's the same thing. So you have to know them, is what I'm saying, and you narrow it down. So you have to persuade them. So there is a mindset, there is a belief system that they have that is working against you. Find out what it is, because you are dealing with people. The same thing, value proposition, the same thing. If they have a mindset, they believe that, then how do I, you have to understand that mindset. First of all, okay, we sell la même chose. Thank you, Timmy. Oh yes, my French speaker in the house. we sell la même chose. So, if the value proposition, you hone it very well and you match it to the audience that will value it. So value proposition is not my own value. It's not the value that I place. And that's another thing that a lot of us entrepreneurs make. So because I think my product or my service is valuable, therefore you must believe it with me. Really? Okay, I will show you now. By the time you market to me and I don't buy your product or your service. So what is of importance to that market is what has to be resolved. Until it is resolved, then can I make money from it? Can that person pay for it in a way that fits my whatever? All of that, as you are getting that information, you'll be refining your value proposition, refining your offering, your service offering and all of that. But without that study of your markets, and I think many times if we spend a lot of time in that, number one, particularly in that audience space, we would think differently about our own products and services and what we need to do. But I see so much of saying, what do I do to convince them? The problem is not the client. The problem is not the customer, it's you. Because I was just sitting on my own. You came and you are trying to push your product on me. Whereas I have other issues that I need solving. So really, good question to ask. What are these people looking for? What problems have they been looking for somebody to solve for them that they cannot solve? That's the question. Because if I have other issues that are more pressing to me, they're trying to market to me a solution I don't need. And I find so many marketing people doing this. Hey, I don't want to ask, okay, madam, is there anything I can help you with? No, they will continue pushing that one. Or go to another customer. It begins and starts with the audience. You really, and your goal, sustainable communications is really about being strategic. And I think the reason why I decided to start with this was because I realized that in this COVID period, I think we will have to be more strategic about a lot of things because people are thinking more deeply about where they spend their money. So for that reason, that spray and pray will not work anymore. So I think all of us will need to have an element of strategy or strategic thinking in the way in which we position our work and what we do. So I will hand over back to Adora. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're 70, I think about a few people have dropped off. Thank you very much. We'll share a link to the recording. Back to you, Adora. Thank you so much. Everyone that joined, I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. That's all we have time for today. As Nishola said, the session will be recorded and will be available to rewatch. You can follow us on our social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and we will have the next event. You will be informed now that you are a registrar. So thank you very much, everybody. And we hope that this was a helpful session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being such an engaging audience. Thank you. Thanks, Adora. Thank you, Coyote.
Thank you.